Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed the top gold and silver stories for the weekend in November 4th, 2018. Trouble in BRICS land. Tropical Trump threatens Chinese world order. Jair Bolsonaro wins the presidency of Brazil, and that has China nervous. Here are some of the stories we're going to be covering besides the Brazilian. Remember, Brazil is the B in the BRICS. Belt and Road potholes. Some issues with China's ambitious Belt and Road program. Coinbase raises another $300 million pre-IPO. Morgan Stanley labels cryptocurrencies a new asset class and plans a Bitcoin swap product. China boosts infrastructure spending. And Bitstamp, a very large crypto exchange, was sold during the week to a Belgian investment company. JP Morgan announced plans to tokenize gold bars. And Malta, small island off the coast of Sicily, attracted 8,500 crypto conference attendees. And Goldman Sachs considers Bitcoin trading and storage services. And no decision yet on those Bitcoin ETFs. And Binance goes live in the African nation of Uganda and signs up 40,000 new accounts. Let's take a look. Well, let's take a look first. There you're looking at a Smaulgld super classic mug, $23.99 with free shipping, free priority shipping within the continental USA. Mugs are hard assets. They cannot go to zero. They're great prepper items. And the Smaulgld super classic is the premier mug. You can also get a Smaulgld classic mug, two-sided mug, Smaulgld, cryptocurrencies, economics, gold and silver analysis. Same great quality, $19.99 with free shipping in the United States. Now, then you could put your mountain house in a mug, and there's a picture. You've got the Smaulgld classic and super classic mugs astride a Pasta Primavera mountain house prepper food canister. Collapse is coming. Are you ready? Speaking of collapse, well, I was on Silver Doctors during the week with James Henry Anderson. We discussed the LBMA and the collapse in Venezuela. So please check that out. You can click on the link right on smaulgld.com and watch from smaulgld.com from this blog post. You can head on over to Silver Doctors YouTube channel. And as you know, during the week, we generally try to get in every night a live stream, and here are some of the topics we covered. We did a crypto update and why backed is important. We looked at the JP Morgan and BRICS COMEX vaults. We had a conversation in the Bitcoin at the Smaulgld subscriber sound off series with Ann Remph. Bitcoin and Litecoin and the Lightning Network was the title of that one. And we looked at how much silver was at the LBMA, COMEX, and Shanghai gold exchanges. Lots of silver in those stockpiles. And we checked out Kazakhstan, buying gold each and every month now for 6 years. And we covered the most recent purchase in September. Gold or silver, what's done the best over 10 years? Very surprising data. A real big breakdown of that data, so please check that out. And last night we discussed Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, and other Wall Street entities getting ready to pounce on cryptocurrencies. And we also discussed the upcoming crypto conference called Consensus Invest, where we see one of the scheduled speakers is a Federal Reserve, New York Federal Reserve board member, and a guy who runs a $39 billion equity fund, and he's going to share the stage with the chairman of the SEC. So very interesting times indeed over there at the crypto conference Consensus Invest, and that'll be November 29th. Now, what happened in gold and silver? Nothing. Look at that. Gold closed last week at $1232.80, and it closed this week at $1232.10. Pretty much just a 70-cent decline. Now silver was pretty much the same. It was $14.66 an ounce at the end of last week, and it managed to scrap together 6 cents and get up to $14.72. Did bring the gold silver ratio down just a little bit, went down just a little bit, down to 83.72. All right, let's take a look at some of the stories we got here. Need a hominin ad blocker. That's a new one. Well, we heard Peter Schiff saying that recessions always start with low unemployment. And then he goes through how we had an unemployment very low at 2007, and then the Great Recession began just 2 years later. And I think I kind of distilled that down to every bull market begins as a bear market, and every bear market begins as a bull market. And when you chase your own preconceived notions, what happens? Well, you chase your tail. There you go. Oops. Bye. Your overall sentiment is, and what happened? I did a poll, 50-50. I don't even say bullish or bearish about what, but it seems that half the followers that follow Smaulgld on Twitter are bullish and the other half are bearish. And then somebody was annoyed. He says, where's the super bullish detached from reality choice? And I noted, well, I didn't put in the super bearish, put me in touch with a bunker specialist option either. Now, let's talk about Brazil. Well, here you go. This was no surprise. Jair Bolsonaro won the runoff a couple of weeks back, and then he ran against this other guy, and it was obvious he was going to win, and he did. He won like 56-44, something like that, and thousands of supporters cheer and set off fireworks outside the home of this Jair Bolsonaro. Now, the reason this guy is of interest, and he is a game changer, is he happens to be, as the media likes to call him, a far-right candidate. Apparently, he is taking a liking to the U.S. Second Amendment and the U.S. Constitution, and he's a Brazilian nationalist. Well, that's getting China a bit worried because China has a deal where, at least according to Bolsonaro, he sounds like Trump, they've been ripping him off. And he's not quite sure he wants to continue with the deals that he has with China. That's getting China nervous. They got enough problems with Trump in the United States, putting tariffs on, and now they're calling, at least the Chinese media, is calling Bolsonaro tropical Trump. And in veiled language, they seem to be warning him not to upset the, what do they have down there? It's not the apple cart, the orange cart. But there he is. China warns tropical Trump will pay if it breaks from our relationships. Its biggest trading partner. We'll see how that goes. We know that Trump called Bolsonaro. I don't think he's focused on Brazil yet, but Brazil is a very large and wealthy country. So we'll see what happens with Brazil. But keep in mind, the BRICS the BRICS are going to crush the dollar. The BRICS have had it. They make it sound like the BRICS are some type of unified entity that are out to crush the dollar. They're not. India is, in many instances, an ally with the U.S., and in more instances than not, is more against China than it is the United States. Russia, we know we have difficulties with Russia. They're on sanctions. That has driven Russia closer to China. South Africa, I don't know what they're doing in the BRICS or what value they add to that entity, whether they act with them in any type of way, shape, or form. And then you've got Brazil and China. So that forms the BRICS. BRICS. I don't think that China's the biggest of them anyway. If you deal with China, you've basically dealt with the BRICS. But also in politics, Angela Merkel, well, she's going to step down as party leader, but she's probably going to stay in place as German chancellor till 2021, but her party's taking a shellacking, and that's all due to the way she handled the migrant crisis, which she basically caused by having unlimited, or seemingly unlimited, migrants come into the country and cause chaos. Of course, she won't admit that, but the voters have somewhat put the blame on her for that. Speaking of chaos and migrants, apparently this caravan is moving closer to the United States, and they're traveling on foot. But Trump has sent troops to the border, set up barbed wires, and has warned the people in those caravans not to come to the U.S. because they will not be allowed in. Then it was also, which they made a big deal out of this, but I hadn't heard about this one during the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. There was a woman who put forth a claim saying she had been raped, and she put it all in the details, sent it to Kamala Harris. It never got the attention, but apparently it did take up some of the time of the Judiciary Committee, and I suppose they took it very seriously. They investigated it, and it turned out she claimed that no, she never met Kavanaugh. It was all a lie, and she did it for attention. So that just puts a stale taste in a lot of people's mouth, especially if you are trying to take real claim seriously when the woman admitted she made it up out of plain cloth. And unfortunately, it's like crying wolf, because the Judiciary Committee on both sides apparently looked into this and they had to take it seriously. But it's like pulling a fire alarm. You have to, the police, the firemen have to come, but it's a public disservice when you make a false claim like that. Now, interesting, election 2018. Every piece of mainstream media news is touting the blue wave without calling it that. Bloomberg says the White House is bracing for GOP midterm losses and an exodus of staff. So it's already over, and the staff is going to be totally humiliated, demoralized when the Democrats win. Now, what's interesting is, in normal circumstances, you expect to lose seats in the House and possibly the Senate when a new president is in. That's just how it goes. That shouldn't be if it's normal, that wouldn't be a demoralizing event. But Bloomberg is out there saying that the White House, of course, sources say, that famous word, sources say, they're worried about an exodus. Joe Weisenthal of Business Insider, what does he say? Or Bloomberg, he's from Bloomberg now. Trump's approval rating plunges amid wave of pre-midterm violence. Of course it did. And here we go. Reuters, fact box. Democrats gain steam in analyst forecasts for U.S. House. Of course they're gaining steam. There they are. The Hill, new poll, majority of registered voters say they're less likely to vote for candidate backed by Trump. Of course they are. Here we go, Reuters again. The picture in the House is brightening for Democrats. Republicans are now scrambling their focus on defending U.S. Senate in campaigns last week. It looks like dire straits for the Republicans. Uh-oh. This is interesting. Senator Joe Donnelly, Democrat, they asked him whether, I don't know, I did see it, and they asked him some question about, I don't know if it was minority opportunity or whatever, and he went on this little, what he thought made himself look good. He says, we have an Indian American, but she does a good job, and we have an African American, but he does an even better job. It's strange use of the word but, as if you would expect that they wouldn't, that it was some type of disability, was how some people read that. But Trump surprises, rattles the GOP in the final stretch. See, everything that's going on is it's all falling apart for the Republicans. It's all falling apart for Trump. Look at that grim face there. That's what the Hill wants you to think is, yeah, he's messing up this current election. No one wants to vote for the guy that Trump might endorse. And now, Sinema leads McSally in Arizona race. She's up by 6 points. Of course she is. There she is. She's going to win Arizona. 6-point lead. It's part of the blue wave. And the Democrats, they're up in Florida too. Of course they are. CNN claiming that Democrats hold the edge in both the gubernatorial and Senate contests. New poll. Now this one was interesting. This one, and this is a correct statement, majority, this is Politico, blame Trump and the media for dividing the country. Now, they're basically throwing the media in to soften the blow. But actually, it's well known that Trump uses incendiary language, and it wouldn't be a shock to anybody to think that Trump might not be a unifying figure. Okay, so 56%, which is not that high, said he's done more to divide than unite. And 30% say he's actually done something to unite the country. But interestingly enough, the ones who control the narrative and report on Trump, 64% of the media say that the media has done more to divide than unite. Now that's amazing because they're up there and they're the ones who control what they report on, and you would think that they'd have the ability to present themselves in a way where they might appear in a better light than that. They come off worse than Trump, and they're in control in some respects of the narrative. I mean, because a lot of the stuff Trump says is nasty, but I guess a lot of the stuff that the media says about Trump is nasty too, and only 17%, or half the amount that said Trump had done more to unite the country. Only 17% said the media had done more to unite the country. So both get bad report cards, but the media got a worse report card. So clearly the situation in the country is there's an assumption that there's division, and the polls, almost 2/3, blame the media, and a little over half blame Trump. But here you go. Cook political report. This and also says Democrats to gain 30 to 40 seats in the House. Of course they will. Now, it's quite possible that the Democrats do win all these seats in the House. But just thinking back over the 2016 elections, these are the same type of reports. Uniform across the board, no chance, no way, Jose, that Donald Trump wins and that Hillary was a shoo-in. And these are the same types of polls coming out. And that led people to think that these polls are gaslighting, but we'll never know. Here we go, another one. This is CNBC. Young Americans signal record turnout for the midterms, reject Trump and the GOP. Of course they do. Nearly 3 in 5 respondents said they're more fearful than hopeful. Of course, you have to blame the GOP and Trump for that. Uh-oh. Now, interestingly enough, this James O'Keefe guy goes undercover and he finds, I think he's been to about 5 or 6 Senate campaigns, and the theme on all of them is they all seem to say, yeah, well, we're not really progressive. We're not really in favor of that. They try to publicly say that they're moderate when behind the scenes they're claiming they're more liberal. However, the Beto campaign was an interesting undercover scoop because they found, and it appears that the campaign manager knows about this, that they were taking money from the campaign and using it to support illegal immigrants in the country. And one could look at it and say, well, that's nice. They're helping people out. Now, even putting aside that they came into the country illegally, but the real issue is that these are campaign funds, and therefore that makes it illegal. It's not the idea that they're not doing something good or right or proper. It's the fact that they're not doing it, again, in the proper way. I'll see if that has any impact on the Texas election. But here we go. Nate Silver. Now, Nate Silver says the Republicans need a polling error to win the House. He's basically come out and said 86% chance that the Democrats win the House. Now, the reason he says that is it's important to note that Nate Silver does not do his 538 analysis. He doesn't do polling himself. So he's relying on the polls. And his skill, apparently, is going through all the polls and doing whatever analysis and weighting that he wants to do of the polls to make his determination. And he's saying, even with those polling errors, it's pretty much a lock that the Republicans lose the House. The problem I have with these generic polls for the House are they are generic and they don't go district by district. And I think there's a polling error. Forget that people lie to pollsters and you don't pick up the right ones. But even so, even if you get a decent statistical sample, I think, and I don't know how they account for this, but there may be certain areas where in these key battleground states where, let's say New Jersey or in California, Rhode Island, where if they poll those people, they may show that they may vote for the Democrat in a 2-to-1 margin, or they may be up by 20%. Whereas in the districts that the Republicans may be expected to win, they may only win by 3 or 4%. Now that'll show a big division, I think, in the generic poll, and it may look like there's a big wide margin, but really, I mean, you can win more congressional seats by just 2 or 3 points, and the other side, the Democrats, could win just a few seats by 9 or 10 or 20%, and it would look like that maybe even the Democrats got more votes. It's the same with the Electoral College, only in reverse there. Okay, so I note that that is a flaw in the methodology. Now, Silver's not pointing out that as a flaw. He's saying, you know, if the polls I've looked at have flaws in them, even so, I've looked at enough polls to show that I'm confident that there's an 85% chance that the Democrats take the House. And then, of course, Bloomberg says voters miss Obama. Now, that's clearly half true at best. I mean, there's a lot of voters that don't miss him, and there's a lot of voters that do miss him. But they say it's because of his integrity. Now, I remember, if you just want to talk about integrity, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. I don't think that was integrity to sell that healthcare program on the basis that, don't worry about it, you know, everything's the same. All we're doing is helping uninsured people, which would be fine if that's what the plan was. We're going to add uninsured people to the program, but if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, period. He said that so many times. And of course he said, we're going to close Guantanamo Bay as soon as I become president, because that's not who we are. Well, of course, never close that either. Now, I understand politics. Politicians can't follow through on their promises, but this phony, oh, these people have integrity is a little much. To say that he or any other politician has some type of integrity, and that's what voters miss, that's clearly just, I don't know what it's called, grandstanding or idol worship. Because I don't know of a politician who you can say he's done everything that he said he was going to do, and people love him for that. All right, now, more. NBC News. Who's going to control Congress? Of course, they have a 7-point edge in the final NBC Wall Street Journal poll. 50 to 43. But remember, you don't vote 50 to 43. Again, they may win, or Democrats may win a race 65-35. And Republicans may win 2 races, 52 to 48. So who got more votes? Probably the Democrats in that scenario. 7-point margin, perhaps. I can't predict this stuff. I'm not even going to try. But I'm only skeptical just because of what happened last time. Now, Hillary Clinton. There she is, scratching her chin, saying she might run out for president in 2020. And I was thinking about that. It's probably not a good idea because not since 1956 has a presidential campaign launched a candidate who lost and then immediately followed up and said, okay, we'll try again. So in 1952, Adlai Stevenson ran against Eisenhower, lost, and the Democrats threw him up again in 1956, and he lost again. The try again generally doesn't work against the same candidate. Now, there are examples where the try again does work. Nixon ran in 1960, lost. Ran for governor in 1962, lost. But then rebuilt his whole organization, came back in 1968, and won. But I wouldn't expect that Hillary would have an advantage coming back. Once you lose, and the president, like Eisenhower, wins, it's very hard to unseat the president. You really have to be coming, and the other thing would be she'd be running against at least 5 or 6 other candidates. And one thing is certain, is when you have a long divisive primary season, almost inevitably the party that has that loses against the candidate who kind of slides through and doesn't really have a primary. Well, we'll see what happens. Over on our internets or interwebs or social media, this guy Imperator Rex got shut down. I don't know why he got shut down, but Twitter's been tossing a lot of people off the platform. But they claim it was about this George Papadopoulos thing that he said. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details. I've left a link here to the Papadopoulos, the Dan Bongino show. He interviewed Papadopoulos. I'll try to synthesize it in a minute. I don't want to spend much time on it, but this guy was a minor player in the Trump campaign. He was basically a young guy trying to sell his services as some type of expert and some type of guy who had some good contacts whereby he could sell research to the campaign about, I think he was engaged in Turkey, understood Russia, he understood some of the interplay between the countries, and he knew some of the diplomats or players. I think that was his goal. Anyway, he was approached by people, and he kind of got the feeling he was being set up. And he was approached, and they told him, why don't you go have lunch with this guy? Why don't you meet this guy? They hired him to write some research. And at one point, this one guy, Masood, I think, introduced him to supposedly Putin's niece, who it really wasn't. And they tried to say, look, we've got Hillary Clinton's emails. And that really wasn't his expertise. He wasn't trying to be a Politico. He was trying to be an insider, a guy who provides information about diplomatic type of information. You know, Turkey does this, Russia does this, and that kind of thing. He wasn't a campaign strategist. And it looks like he was set up. They paid him money. He didn't bring the money home with him. He put it in Greece with his lawyers. And they're saying there might be a FISA warrant on him. And he was one that was indicted basically just for lying to the FBI. He got like 3 days in jail or something. And now he's talking about trying to get out of that plea agreement because they think that he may also be part of some type of, it looks like, according to this interview and what people have researched, and again, I can't vouch for it, that Papadopoulos was presented with people that were actually US FBI or CIA actors, but presented as if they were Russian to make it look like he was colluding with Russians, when in fact he was colluding with people that were on our side. This Masood guy apparently was not a Russian or working for the Russians. He was working for the British, I believe. So in any event, I mean, it's this type of conspiracy stuff or conspiracy theory, fact, whatever it is, that got this guy suspended, apparently. I didn't research it, but who had written about it, this Imperator Rex. I don't know if that's why he got suspended, but there it is. And there's Dan Bongino interviewed him the other day. Now this one is foolish. This would be in Moronica. Twitter looking to remove the like button. They've been looking to remove this thing for a while to improve debate on social network. Now I get it. And I'm a big fan of the more popular argument doesn't mean that it's a better argument. That's clearly not true. And I don't like when people say, well, everybody else thinks so, so you must be wrong. That's not true. But I don't think the like button actually improves or disproves the debate. It actually just shows how many people like something. It's an indicator. I think the reason they want to take it away is they don't like when a lot of people like stuff that they don't like, and a lot of people don't like stuff that they want people to like, so it's embarrassing, so they want to take the like button away. My view. Now this Gab site, now this is kind of strange. Now Gab is a Twitter alternative, and I'm all for alternatives. I don't think everyone should be, if they're going to do social media, all on YouTube, all on Facebook, all on Twitter. There should be alternative sites. And this site has an alternative site, but they have a different view. If you don't like what someone's saying, you find it offensive, you just block them and you never have to see it. I kind of believe that. Unless somebody is threatening violence or being the most heinous person, you know, you basically allow people to say what they want to say, and you don't have to see it. You just get rid of it. Well, apparently one of the guys, well, not one of the guys, the guy who was the synagogue shooter had written some nasty stuff on the site. And they blamed the site for hosting it. Now, the problem I have with that is I have seen some really nasty stuff on Twitter by mistake. I actually saw, I'm not going to say what I saw. The point is, you can't blame this. They can't monitor everything on there. But they try to make it sound like this guy, Howard Dean actually said that the site itself should be tried as an accomplice. Now that's kind of crazy, because is Facebook, they've had live streaming of murders on there. They're not responsible for that. I mean, they have to take their appropriate action to notify the law enforcement, but they can't be held responsible because someone live streamed a murder on there. And similarly, this guy, this website can't be responsible for the synagogue shooting. I mean, it's very strange when they, and I actually think what they're trying to do is they realize that, you know, if the guy also had an account on Facebook and Twitter, but the point is that I think it's just a way of shutting down the opposition and saying, look, this site harbors this type of hateful character, when they actually did a survey, or I think 96% of there's like 96% hate-free, however you define that, on Twitter, and there's like 93% hate-free on Gab. All right, well, if you want looking for 100%, then you should just shut down all the sites and arrest everybody. I mean, that's Howard Dean. I mean, the only thing I can say about him is his training is as a doctor and not as a lawyer. But you can't hold a platform It's not like they encouraged him and told him to say this kind of stuff. In fact, they shut it down and they notified the FBI. I'm neither defending nor promoting any of these platforms. If they're meant to be neutral, well, then they're neutral. You can only blame them if they actually go out of their way to help someone, but then they're not a platform. Then they're an actual actor. All right, let's see. U.S. economic data, personal income. This is not a good sign. When you have income up 2% and personal spending up higher than that. But consumer confidence up to an 18-year high. And you got a lot of debt out there in the system, 1.1338 trillion in 2008. Although the top October payrolls were at 250,000, average hourly earnings were up 3%, they're saying here. So now here's Miss Yellen, highly accommodative monetary policy. I remember her very well. Now she's saying the rising deficit is unsustainable. Well, if she hadn't bought $2 trillion worth of U.S. Treasury bonds, maybe it wouldn't be there. If I had a magic wand that would raise taxes. After the fact, all these people, they all of a sudden realize what they've done. What's his name? Conflating a Bernanke and Greenspan, both of them. They both almost reject the errors of their ways as if they had nothing to do with it. She's responsible in part. Now she's saying, yeah, she would change things. But she never made a mistake, I'm sure. This is interesting. Whitey Bulger was killed in prison. Now, the reason I have this under Mueller is he was the FBI agent at the time, or the head of the FBI, when the local FBI office actually had this guy as an informant for the FBI, and they used him to go after the mafia, the Italian mob in Boston's North End, but they apparently let him get away with a lot of stuff because he was an informant, and because he had this almost immunity. He'd go around killing people and he wouldn't get in trouble for it because he was an informant. But apparently what happened in jail was one of these mafia hitmen found him and killed him. I'm not going to go through this. Is Papadopoulos' own tweets about talking to this Mitsud guy and how he thinks he was entrapped. Well, the dollar was hegemoning higher all week and set for its biggest winning streak in more than 3 years. Now, Trump claims he spoke with President Xi of China. Then they were talking about, there was some rumor that there was going to be a trade deal. All turned out to be fake, but the stock market rose. The yuan finally strengthened, but no deal. Then there was a story that China may agree to buy U.S. oil over Iran as part of an agreement to end the trade war. Problem with that is, as Chigo points out, is you can't replace medium, heavy, sour grade Iranian oil with the light grade U.S. oil. And she says this is laughable. But I think, I mean, that could be just botching the points of the deal. It may be, perhaps if there is such a deal, they wouldn't buy U.S. oil instead of or over Iranian oil, but maybe in addition to that oil, or if they're going to have Iran on sanctions, it would just be they just wouldn't buy Iranian oil, but they'd also buy the U.S. oil. So who knows? And then they had sanctions on Iran, but they gave China a waiver. So that's all in flux. We don't know what's going on. Now, China, what's going on? China to crush the dollar. Gold-backed yuan. All right. So China's PMI fell. That's the services industry, and that's what they were trying to do, is convert to a service economy. That's not happening, and they wanted to move away from building needless infrastructure, but they're going to have to continue to do that because the service economy isn't picking up, and the industry, the industrial economy, is also slowing as a result, well, not just of sanctions, but of years of just printing and issuing credit and building stuff that they don't need. There's a limit to how much they can build, and that's why they're going Belt and Road. They think they can expand the Ponzi scheme overseas, but now a lot of countries are smartening up and they say, whoa, hold on a minute, we're not going to get into a debt trap here. We may not need these infrastructure projects, and we're not going to be stuck with the debt. So China's factory growth has also weakened the most in 2 years. China to crush the dollar. Yeah, the BRICS have had it. Gold back yuan. All these people cheering on China. The China weakest yuan since 2008 put spotlight on China capital outflows, but they got gold and it's a game changer. Now, here's just a few examples of these Belt and Road projects going awry. You know, these build it and they will come. Malaysia recently canceled the pipeline and the rail projects. These are, I think the pipeline was a few billion. One of them was, they're all billions of dollars, and they've just outright canceled them. My Belt and Road. There's that. Here's Pakistan rethinking its Belt and Road plan. They canceled the $2 billion project. The people are saying, oh, the Chinese have this under control. No, they don't. They didn't plan this. Well, that's just one. No, it's not. Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar back away from Chinese projects. Belt and Road. Bloomberg, Belt and Road program has bred paranoia and resentment. Countries fear being sucked into so-called debt traps. So plenty of issues. Now there's also the Quad. That's US-led Japan, Indian, and Australian group that also is vying for these types of projects. Now they may end up bailing out some of these bad Chinese projects, or may even compete and cause China further hardship on its Belt-in Road. Also, the new USMCA, the former NAFTA agreements, include things where they muscle China out, where Canada and Mexico can't deal in certain instances with China. Bangladesh favors $4.6 billion Japanese port plan over Chinese Belt-in Road. So China is not doing that well, and here they are. Pick up the poo or we take the dog. This is under China's social credit system. And here's an interesting one, dystopian view of the future. This guy is on a train, and they warn him and the people traveling, don't travel without a ticket or we will get your social credit. And we will mess it up. Regulators bring a record 26 market manipulation cases. And cryptocurrencies. You know what? We're going to cover these tonight on the live stream. So please join us tonight. And thanks for listening.